It is our final PGA DFS podcast of the 2021 calendar year. So shed a tear, but do not fear. We will return in 2022. The rhyming there, definitely not intentional. And there will be no more rhyming throughout the rest of the podcast today as we get you set for the RSM Classic this weekend. It is a multi-course event. Should be a whole lot of fun and not a bad field either. So we're going to dive on in, get you set for some PGA DFS over on FanDuel. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, final PGA podcast of the year. A little sad. How you doing today?
I'm torn because I had three things that I could have said. So I'm going to say all three of them, and then you can lead off because I'm not going to answer how I'm doing because it's
I want
always
to hear A first.
Well, the first thing I was planning on saying was it's the final PGA podcast of the year, and I think it's the first time ever that I actually tweeted out the link because I learned how to do that last week. So I did that.
But last week, you mean you asked me yesterday where you find the links on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yes. A. Okay.
So there was
that. To A is that I'm proud of you. B.
Okay. I think you said have no fear, shed no tear, and you could have said we'll be back next year, but you missed that opportunity. So that threw me off because that just sort of trumped the YouTube link. But then also in all of this, I realized that one of my lights is not on. So in a second, I'm going to have to leap off camera to turn on one of my lights so I look a little bit more evenly lit.
Response to B is you're now the host because you thought of that and I didn't. So take it away. Did you have a C or was C the lights thing?
C was the lights thing.
Okay. You weren't going to make mention of the fact that I beat you in our head-to-head despite Charlie Hoffman withdrawing? You weren't going to mention that?
No, I was gonna kind of bury that one. Now, in fairness, I did. Look, golf is a gentleman's game. DFS golf should, by extension, also be a gentleman's game. So when I saw that Charlie Hoffman withdrew, I reached out to Jim. I said, hey, he withdrew. Jim tilted. I said, hey, if you want to replace someone, because at that point he didn't see the leaderboard because, Thursdays for us during NFL season, a little bit hectic. We don't really start.
Airport.
And he picked Luke List, who he liked. It fit under the salary cap, and it didn't even matter anyway because I got demolished.
So you did the right thing, and you deserve credit for that. However, I need to brag whenever things go well because I think you're up 7-3 in our NFL head-to-head. So I have to focus on the things that I have accidentally done well in, and that was a one sample event in PGA. I happen to be okay. We can ignore everything else and just focus on that. And I feel like, Brandon, I got to go out on a high note because, again, this is our final PGA event of 2021, at least from a DFS perspective. For us here on the podcast, we're not going to have one for the Hero and other stuff. So final time talking here. We're still going to have a lot of NFL stuff on the podcast, though. Quick update on that. Next week is Thanksgiving, which means we have 3 NFL podcasts in 3 days. The Week 11 recap is Monday, Thanksgiving podcast Tuesday, and then the Week 12 podcast preview is on Wednesday. Those are at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and then 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page. Make sure to subscribe there. Also hit subscribe on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Of course, Week 11 is before that, coming up this Thursday at 10 a.m. We've also got UFC, NBA, NHL, all right here in the same place. So despite the fact this is the final PGA podcast of the year, still a lot of good reasons to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And while you're there, make sure you leave us a rating and review as well. Hey, football fans, the NFL season is just over the halfway point as Week 11 approaches, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action. Each week, FanDuel is offering fans the chance to win prizes by participating in daily fantasy football on Sundays. The prize pool is a whopping $1.7 million for this week's FanDuel Sunday Million. First place takes home $300,000. All you have to do is head over to FanDuel today and click on the NFL Sunday Million contest, draft your lineup of players, sit back and enjoy Sunday NFL football. Go to FanDuel.com today to participate in the NFL Sunday Million. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. Let's dive in now to the RSM Classic. Of course, as mentioned, it is a multi-course event out at Sea Island Resort, the Seaside course is 7,005 yards. It is a par 70. The plantation course is 7,060 yards. It is a par 72. Now, all golfers will play one round on the seaside course, one round on the plantation course. Then there will be a cut after the first 2 rounds. Top 65 plus ties will make it there. Then those who make it through the cut will play 2 more rounds on the seaside course. So if we're looking at the bulk of what makes things up here, it will be the seaside course, but they will all play at least one round on the plantation course as well. So seaside course, the main focus, but it is a multi-course event. So Brandon, we got a lot of data here from the RSM Classic, from Sea Island Resort. What have you found when digging into those past events to see what matters here?
Yeah, so if you dig back, we have shot link on 3 of the rounds for golfers who made the cut. So if you see a missed cut here, you're going to have 1 round of shot link data. So you don't want to dig too far deep into the shot link results for just a single missed cut, because you don't know what happened at the plantation course. That being said, we still have 4 golfers who made the cut, 3 rounds of shot link data. You can generally tell if someone has good irons over 3 rounds. It probably had good irons at the plantation course as well for that week. But that's just always a caveat whenever we have this multi-course setup and we don't have shot link at both courses. So that's kind of one thing to keep in mind. But the second thing is we've had a lot of courses lately where you haven't had to be long, and sometimes it actually rewarded you to be more accurate. And I'm going to read the past winners here. And this is, I almost jokingly called them a list of big hitters, but I don't think we could really even carry that over for the first few. But the most recent winners here are Robert Streb, who won last year and in 2015, so might make an appearance in the past history section. 2-time winner. Tyler Duncan, Charles Howell III, Austin Cook, Mackenzie Hughes, Kevin Kisner, Chris Kirk, Tommy Gainey, Ben Crane, and Heath Slocum. So basically not the longest hitters in the field generally ever. And we have some golfers that we know we target, we bump up whenever there is a benefit to being more accurate. So that's going to be one of the big keys for me this week, and I'm sure a lot of people as well. Data Golf actually shows an above average approach shot distribution frequency from each 25-yard range between 100 to 125, 125 to 150, and 150 to 175. So basically some of the shorter approaches, which goes back to shorter hitters. Of course, if you're longer, you'll have even shorter approaches in, which is always the case. But the approach shot shouldn't really be that difficult for the shorter hitters. Whenever we have shorter hitters, we have more of the field in play, so that leads to volatility. And looking at the past winning scores, effectively around 20 under, that leads to more volatility. So that's going to be the name of the game for me this week. I want accurate drivers, but I also want to kind of be open to the fact that really anything can happen at the top of this leaderboard.
Yeah, and I think we see that in the winners. You see, weird list of names there for sure, and that says to me that there are a lot of unknowns this week. We can't get too tied to certain golfers because there's no such thing as a sure thing ever at PGA DFS, but especially for this week. And I think that what you were talking about is also why, typically when we go through the key stats, I will say that I'm going to go with good drives gain. That's not the case this week. I'm going to go with fairways gain specifically over good drives gain because of just how much it's skewed towards the accuracy guys. So typically I'll go with good drives gain with the intention being, hey, so there are some guys who don't care if they put it just off the fairway and stuff like that usually. But I think this week accuracy does matter. Accuracy is actually the key stat for me. And that does pop up in the past data as well. So I'm looking at fairways gained, approach, and then also around the green, and then putting on Bermuda are the ones I'm keying in on. Any deviations for you from that list?
Approach, accuracy, birdie or better rate, and strokes gained putting on Bermuda are my key stats.
All righty, so we're going to break down golfers who have done well with that in mind in just 1 second. And let's start things off here with Kevin Kisner. You mentioned Kisner is one of the winners here and also fits the mold of being guys who we bump up on courses like this. Kisner is 10-7. His salary is definitely not low. What are you seeing with his past history at this event?
Yeah, and just a bit of a spoiler alert, when we talk about bookmaker odds and movement, he is really the largest mover that I've seen from 41 to 1. Let me get this right because it
We
was
value
pretty.
accuracy. We
Yeah,
value truth on this podcast.
hey, just like we're playing in this RSM Classic field, we value accuracy this week.
Oh man, you're on fire today.
Maybe I
Love
am
it.
the host. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Again, this is great.
please don't ever make me the host of anything. Yeah, from 41 to 1 on FanDuel Sportsbook to 30 to 1.
Ooh.
Everyone else, this is just basically what we've seen in recent, like, I don't know, probably for like the past year. Everyone kind of opens a little bit shorter than they all drift. A few guys stay the same. Maybe one or two guys really makes a change. Kisner's getting backed pretty heavily. The salary of $10,700 being very, very affordable this week on FanDuel leads me to believe that Kisner will have some popularity, especially because he's the former winner. Back in 2016. Since then, he did miss 2 cuts, but has 3 top 7 finishes in his past 4 starts at this setup. So in total, since 2012, win, second, fourth, 7th, 20th, just sorted by best results, and then 3 missed cuts. So not bad by any means. And Kisner did win recently at the Wyndham back in mid-August. Since then, he has gone cut at the Northern Trust, 66th at the BMW, cut at the Shriners, 54th at the CJ Cup. So not the best results, but he's gone back to a course where he's done well, and he's got that recent win. But the bigger concern is that the missed cuts recently have come with really bad iron play, which is kind of what Kevin Kisner can give us. Of course, I think Kisner, it's probably fair to say, like, hey, he's very good at golf in the right setups, in the right field. This seems like something that we can look at and say other courses just don't really suit him. So it's going to bog down his data. Now that he's at a course where he can play well, he's going to be back on track. But his recent form entering this event when he's had a lot of good finishes, it was actually a bit better than it is now. If you look at the past 5, even past 10 events, which includes the win, like it's not that amazing for Kisner right now. I don't think it's as simple as like he's guaranteed for a 10th place finish, top 10 this week. So is Kisner popping up for you at all? And do you presume that he'll be just too chalky anyway?
Yeah, I think with the way the odds have moved, I would bet that he does wind up being pretty popular, which, I get for the reasons that you mentioned, but also you mentioned the form now relative to what it was previously. Let's look back to 2020, specifically when he finished second. In that one, he was averaging 2.3 total strokes gained per event over his previous 10 rounds, according to Fantasy National. Entering this one in his previous 10, he's at negative 1.3, so that's a 3-shot difference. And there are some really, really bad events in the profile. You talked about the missed cuts at the Shriners and the Northern Trust. The CJ Cup was a no-cut event, and he lost 5.1 approach there. So the approach is really bad. It's a bad when you adjust for field as well. And this is not like a bad field. It's not like a star-studded field by any means, but it's not a bad field. So I think it's a volatile event, which means we want to try harder to avoid the chalk. I have reason to believe that he may be not the best chalk. And I think that I can get to guys I believe in a lot more by getting 600-ish more dollars in salary up and then maybe being a bit less balanced. And I think that that's kind of where I'd want to be over using Kisner at 10-7. Is that kind of where you're at too?
Yeah. This field is about as good as the Houston Open was last week. At Mayakoba as well. I mean, a tinge worse according to Data Golf's field strength numbers, but still good. All those 3 fields were effectively, so the past 3 fields we've been looking at, effectively like the average golfer in those is about the average worldwide golfer. So it's not like it's the Bermuda. It's not like it's just a terrible, terrible field. And that is a little bit damning for Kisner. I'm not trying to knock him, and I feel like every time he comes up, we end up like more down on him than we like to be. But
Yeah.
It's just a game theory play this week, and again, it always feels a little bit underwhelming to say, well, just play the guys that nobody else likes this week. But there honestly is, like, we have pivots at every salary point,
Right.
I think, and according to, no, this is not. Oh wait, this is updated. Well, Fanshare Sports says it was updated Wednesday, November 10th, but it's showing for the RSM. So I'm assuming it's accurate because Kevin Kisner does lead in tags thus far. So,
and there's a heavy correlation in general, I would assume, between tags and who's getting bet. And Kisner's checking both those boxes. Mid-range salary, good course history. I think it's a week where we probably jump off that train and potentially instead go to Webb Simpson because we can get some better recent form, good course history. Obviously, the salary very different. Let's talk about Webb here. It's a non-distance course. Webb is in the field automatically. I think we have to slot him in here like out of obligation, just like in our contract. But Webb has done well here in the past. He's played here 7 total times, 6 if you ignore a withdrawal that he had. And Webb has been top 10 in 3 of those 6 events. 2 of those were recent. He was third in 2018. He was runner-up in 2019. Gained 6.6 strokes tee to green in his rounds at Seaside in both of those events. Plus, we know that Webb is a very good Bermuda putter, so the tee to green numbers are not misleading. Like, it's just, it's just a good all-around golfer. The more recent stuff for Webb is not dazzling, but it's also not actively bad. He was 14th at the CJ Cup, despite some rougher ball striking there. His approach play ranks 30th the past 50 rounds. I think that Webb is probably a tiny bit oversalaried at 11.9, but I also get it, and I'm not opposed. I just think there might be some other guys in this range I like a smidge more. I think that Webb is more legitimate relative to the salary than Kisner, but like I think given the odds, given the salary, I think this might be a good event where maybe I don't use Webb Simpson despite the fact that it's like a Webb type course. Where are you at with Webb right now?
Yeah, he's also getting a lot of buzz on Fanshare. I think it's probably going to wind up where Kisner is potentially the most popular golfer, despite not being the highest salary golfer, just because the salary feels low for what the public probably would presume for Kisner, just coming back to a place where he's won and everything like that. As for Simpson, I'm with you. Like, I like him. He's not my favorite at the top. And I actually sincerely like a more balanced approach this week because the field does drop off. Pretty sure last week we said, after like 96, it started to fall off. I see that again this week. The low 9,000 is not too terrible, but for the most part, there is a drop off around 97 for me. So I really want to be back up in like the low 10s. And so I do think that it's a 1 or a like 1.5 stud main lineup week. And for that reason, I don't think I'm going to try to jam in Webb Simpson. Plus, my favorite golfer of the week, which is, or who is, not which, Louis Oosthuizen. He's the number 1 for me. I don't anticipate getting to like Louis plus Webb in my lineups. So I think by default, I'm going to be a little bit light on Webb.
I also like Louis. We'll talk about him later on in the player picks. I think that he is the best golfer in this field right now. I think that my second golfer might be a bit more high salaried than yours based on the conversation. I think there's a couple tiers at the top, and I want to try to be in those tiers. And I think part of the reason why I am inclined to do that is because I don't think there's a big gap at all between the low 9,000 range and the mid 8,000 range. I'm not typically a guy who loves the mid 8,000 range. I think this week it's actually a bit more lively. We'll talk about some guys who may fit that pretty well later on. So we're using the same principles of thought, but having slightly modified takeaways from that.
So who are you thinking? We both like Louis. That much is known. His salary is 11.7. You said you think that your second golfer in your main lineup is going to be higher than my second golfer. What
Correct.
range are you thinking?
Harris English at 11.4.
Okay, because I'm either on Connors at 11.5 or Henley at 11.3.
Okay, so we're taking the same route then.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like I don't think it's a Louis plus Cam Smith, Louis plus Webb, or Louis plus Scheffler week.
I can get behind that then. I think I agree with that pretty definitively. So let's move now to some lower salary guys, because again, it's a kind of wide open event. A lot of guys can compete here. And one of the guys who has done so is the aforementioned Robert Streb, a 2-time winner here, $9,400. That's not the best range. So Brandon, can we turn to Streb in that range at 9.4?
So he's 2-time winner. The 10-fingered grip it just always bugs me watching Streb, but you can't really knock the 2 wins. So he's missed 2 of the past 4 cuts here, so it's like not all great. Sometimes you see great course history where it's like this dude's top 15 every year. Sometimes it's he's got 2 wins, but he's also missing some cuts, and it's more of the latter here. But the real reason I gave pause is because Streb's kind of playing okay right now. He finished 27th at the Shriners, 9th at the CJ Cup, 62nd at the Zozo, 7th last week in Houston. He's an accurate driver. He's got a good short game. He's obviously done well enough here whenever he's put it all together. And right now he might be putting it all together. So I'm not there, but I'm not that far away just because, again, you and I like don't really put a whole lot of stock into course history, but at a place where you've won twice, you have to feel good. Golf, there's a big like subjective part of golf that's intangible, and he's golfing pretty well right now. So I don't know. I'm not going to play him, but he wasn't as easy to write off as I anticipated he would be.
Well, I think the other thing too is we're talking about Kisner and his form now relative to what it was in 2020, and Strebs is better. If you look at his previous 10 events again via Fantasy National, his previous 10 events heading into 2020 when he won, he was at negative 3.2 total strokes gained per event. He's at negative 0.5 now, so still a negative, but less negative, and he's at 1.4 strokes gained per event in his previous 5. You mentioned the good finishes at the CJ Cup and the Houston Open. Wasn't getting there via approach, which we do prefer, but he was gaining everywhere else, and now maybe better positioned off the tee than he was elsewhere. So I don't think he's a cross-off. Will I use him? I'm probably going to try to avoid this tier in general, so like I wouldn't be shocked if I didn't, but like I'm not totally against it, I guess is what I'd say.
Yeah, like usually this would just sort of be a spot where we're like, yeah, Streb's won here twice, form's terrible, don't go there. But like it's and he's putting, so like he's putting well, but he's not carrying himself to good finishes just with the putter. The tee to green game mostly neutral, good enough off the tee numbers, and should stick with the breakdown this week. I'll take like a lost shot from approach if it comes with like positives everywhere else.
Yeah.
It's so long as you're not the minus 6.1 like he's had at the BMW. But boy, I thought, I mean, forgive me for not tracking Robert Streb a little bit closer, but there's kind of some stuff to like right now.
Streb Tracker on Twitter is not run by Brandon. If you actually look at the past 2 measured events, Streb has gained 2.4 and 1.5 off the tee. Again, not a distance guy. So kind of weird to see that. The last time he gained 1.5 off the tee in consecutive measured events, I'm just going to scroll. I have not found where this is yet. I am back to 2019 and still scrolling. I am back to 2017 and still scrolling. I have not found it yet. I'm not sure the last time that Robert Streb gained 1.5 off the tee in consecutive events. It was 2015, the PGA Championship in the Northern Trust. That was the last time Robert Streb gained 1.5 off the tee in consecutive events. And now we go to an event where he's better positioned off the tee. I'm not saying like, hey, we should trust this because we talk about how age, stuff like that. You don't expect massive strides from older guys, maybe just outperforming, but like, I'd rather have them be good than bad in a small sample. So that's where I'm at with Streb. I think that given that range being not great, that is something to keep in mind. Now, I mentioned that I like the mid and low 8,000 range more than usual. One guy who is down there is Matthew NeSmith. And we talk about NeSmith a lot as a guy we turn to when distance doesn't matter as much. And he's shown that approach is viable here at the RSM. NeSmith has been here twice. He finished top 15 both times. He did putt decently well in both, but the ball striking was pretty good too. He gained 5.4 strokes tee to green last year, gained 4.1 back in 2019. Again, that's across the 3 measured rounds at the Seaside course. NeSmith has been okay recently. He did gain 6.2 in the approach at the Fortinet and 6.4 at the Shriners, so the pop weeks are there, and that's important. He hasn't shown upside yet, and that matters even for value plays. Now, I initially thought that maybe Neesmith wouldn't really be a guy who pops for me, but like having the ability to get 6 strokes and approach in multiple recent events, I think that's kind of interesting at 82. So I'm receptive to Neesmith in that low 8,000 range. I think I like some more guys, other guys more than him, but I think that Neesmith is at least on my radar. Where is he at for you?
Yeah, you mentioned the upside. That's kind of an issue for me.
Yeah.
Whenever I look at Neesmith, I think, and this is something I would love to come up with some time for once we have the break from PGA, is
Yeah.
to look at sort of predicting upside, and looking even closer at ranges of outcomes for golfers. But his Bermuda putting is really the by far his best surface. It's almost neutral. But with that, according to Fantasy National, he has gained strokes putting in just 38% of his past 50 rounds. And as much as we want to knock putting and say it's random, like it's not random. It's a skill to putt well. It's a skill to have a good baseline of putting, but it's also kind of a skill to be able to break through and have positive putting rounds. That way you stay relevant. And we've seen missed cuts from him recently specifically. So for Neesmith, I don't know if there's enough with the putter yet to want to buy in to the ability to gain strokes with his approach play, which is a big deviation from the way that I used to look at things, where it was like, hey, he's got irons, and if he just puts it together with a putter, which he can. I mean, over his past like 10 events, he's got 2 events with at least 3 strokes gained putting, but that's also not really enough to make a strong run unless you are leading the field in strokes gained tee to green.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, even 82, we do need upside. Like we want guys who have the
need
ability
upside
to
in
finish well.
every spot in your lineup you want to roster a golfer you think can win.
You want 6 darts at the dartboard as opposed to 5. Like that's kind of just the way to view it here. And Neesmith, half a dart at best. And I think that's a fair criticism. And there are other guys in the mid 8,000 range I do like. Again, not crossing off Neesmith. I'm okay, receptive to him, but there are other guys I like more who we'll talk about later on during the show. But first, let's talk about current form golfers who are coming in here with noteworthy form entering this event, one of whom is Adam Scott. He is 10-9, right in that Kisner range. And if Kisner's going to be the chalk this week, that means that other guys may be viable pivots. What do you see with Adam Scott here at 10-9 for the RSM?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a time of year where we want to target like the younger guys or like the brand new names like a Taylor Moore or like just the guys who are like playing really well and we think like are making the next step, like a Max Homa, who I do love this week. But we also have Adam Scott, right? Like, what do you do with Adam Scott? What do you do with like a Webb Simpson this week? I think they both kind of fit in that same mold to some degree, but Scott with a much easier salary to get to at 10-9. He has had plenty of relevancy in tougher fields than this one since August. He was 2nd at the Wyndham Championship, 14th at the BMW PGA Championship, 35th at the Shriners, 5th at the CJ Cup, and 54th last week. Now, according to Data Golf, he is 5th in this field in true strokes gained per round over his past 20 rounds. He is 8th in ball striking in that span. Over the past 6 months, so a larger sample, he's 7th overall. And all of this is to say, yeah, Adam Scott, relative to this field, a good golfer, and still a good golfer, and still probably worth a salary of $10,900. But he doesn't really have like that. Yeah, I want to play a lot of Adam Scott this week because he's Adam Scott, and we have these other options we can go to, like a Scottie Scheffler. Like, I don't know. I think Scott's in a pretty good position. I want some balance this week. And first of all, I'm much more inclined to play Adam Scott than Kevin Kisner.
Yeah.
But having Adam Scott available at 10-9 just really opens me up to saying, hey, maybe Adam Scott will be my second highest salary golfer because he seems a little bit undersalaried. Any thoughts on Scott?
Yeah, I think that he makes a lot of sense. I am receptive to him as well. I think that the question I would have is, do I go with Adam Scott over, I think specifically Taylor Gooch? Taylor Gooch is the other guy in that range who have a really hard time passing up in an event where, he's not, I mean, Gooch is not like an accurate guy off the tee, but like.
Neither Scott.
Right. But if it's an event where I'm going to have to care less about you being good off the tee that moves Taylor Gooch up a lot. So I might be inclined to go Gooch over Scott. Do you want a little head-to-head here, a little head-to-head action, or do you like both enough where you want to avoid it?
I like both. Historically, I get trounced in head-to-heads, but I'll take it.
Okay.
Just because I should if I had the salaries pulled up, Taylor Gooch would have been a perfect example of like
He's
this is the
11,000.
time of year where we're like, hey, let's play Taylor Gooch and not Adam Scott.
Yeah.
It's like, is that dumb? I think there's a case to be made for both. I like them both, and that's just goes back to like a bit of a more modified balance where if I didn't like Louis so much, I probably could be talked into like starting a lineup with Taylor Gooch and Adam Scott and just peppering this range. So for the sake of my argument, I will take the Scott over Gooch bet.
But I think both are fine. I think that me taking that head-to-head is not saying that I don't like Adam Scott. It's more so I just like Taylor Gooch. So that's where I'm at there. Let's bump up back to the studs here and talk about Scottie Scheffler as a guy with good current form. He is co-favorite with Webb Simpson at 14-1, and you can tell why when you look at what he's done recently. Scheffler at the Houston Open gained 3.9 strokes off the tee, gained 3.6 in approach, and 3.9 around the green. That'll work. That'll definitely play. There are some holes, though. Scheffler, not the most accurate guy off the tee. He's 118th in fairways gained, 51st in good drives gained. So even when you account for situations where he's trying to put on the fairway, not always doing so, could have some trouble there. But Scheffler overcame that to finish fifth here back in 2019. And that was before Scheffler truly broke out and became the golfer he is right now. So in that upper range, I prefer Webb over Scheffler. But I think Louis Westhuizen, we've kind of talked about him before, is probably my favorite guy. So let's just talk about this upper range in general and break down that tier. We talked about Scheffler, talked about Webb, talked about Westhuizen. Is it Louis pretty definitively number one for you up there?
Yeah, it's Louis for me. He's the best overall fit. He's number one in my combo model, and I just don't really see a case for anyone else to get that close to him, especially at the salary of 11.7. I could see the case if like Scheffler and Louis' salaries were swapped. I do think too that Scheffler will carry some popularity after the good finish last week. So I don't see it particularly close between like I have Louis in his own tier.
Yeah.
So he's a virtual lock for our head to head. He's a virtual lock for my main lineups and just the guy that I will most likely be heaviest on. He is the most likely winner according to my win simulation model. So I'm probably not going to get away from Louis. And as much as you can make the case for Scheffler, Webb, Cam Smith, who I historically love, even Corey Connors, if we want to throw him in to that conversation, I don't think any of them necessarily do that much more than a Harris English, a Russell Henley, a Taylor Gooch, or an Adam Scott this week.
I agree with that too. Louis to me is number one. He is in my bobble hat lineup as I have a preliminary one built right now, the head-to-head that we do each week. I think that Louis makes too much sense. So I can talk a lot about Scheffler, Webb, et cetera, but like to me, it really is about Louis, especially under the assumption those guys will be more popular in an event where we want to try to deviate from what everyone else is doing, given their betting odds, et cetera. So I think that we can say Louis to us grades out really well. Now let's go back down to the mid 8,000 range. Talk about Tom Hoagy, because Tom Hoagy's $8,400 and could be a guy of note here in an event where our roster construction will bring us down to that range. Hoagy has a lot of current form. I just don't know what to make of it. So, Brandon, you talk me through what you've seen with Hoagy recently and whether he is someone we can turn to in this mid 8,000 range.
Yeah, she's got a pretty full card so far in 2021. 7 total or in the 2022 season, I guess. Everyone's played a lot in 2021 by now, but
my Excel sheet says 2021 for like last year's event, and it trips me up when I look at it every time because I'm just like, I don't know what year to call this.
Yeah,
we're done with it after this week. So a New Year's blessing in November.
Yeah. So in the new PGA Tour season, Hoagy has played 7 times. He's made 6 cuts, 2 top 20s. So not phenomenal there, but 8,400 is the salary. So that's, reasonable. Also not being bad is that Hoagy ranks first in true strokes gained from approach over his past 20 rounds, according to Data golf, he's 12th over the past 3 months, so even a larger sample. Top 12 in iron play once adjusted for field strength. And over the past year, my data has him in the 88th percentile in this field and adjusted iron play, 78th percentile in fairways gained as well. He's not done well at this event, but things kind of set up well for him because he's like accurate enough. But did he pop up for you at all in the value range whenever you were studying up down there?
Yeah, so I think that like we're talking about upside in the lower salary guys. And I think Hoagy has that because he's shown it previously. Like he's shown that he can cook a little bit. He should set up well for this event. I know he hasn't yet, but like I would say the past calendar year or so, Hoagie's probably been playing better golf than he was entering those events. Like I think it's probably taken at least a half a step up from where he was previously. Hoagy can hit fairways. You mentioned the approach play can be very good, and it's been very good for the past, more recent sample. He's translated that to decent finishes, but not great. But I think that the decent but not great is not an indictment saying he doesn't have upside. It's just he hasn't shown it yet in that range. We've seen it previously. So I think that Hoagy in that mid 8,000 range is probably one of the guys I'd be okay with. Not my favorite down there, but I think that I will likely wind up with him in my player pool realistically. So I'm on board. I think that Hoagy works this week. What about you?
Yeah. This is you never like to see this, but he's not in the 91st percentile in opportunities gained over the past 50 rounds. That's Fantasy National stat for birdie chances. 27th percentile in birdie or better rate gained. So, we've seen worse. We've seen worse splits, but that's a little too reminiscent of myself. Do you want to go all in? But again, like accurate driver, good irons currently, good irons long term. If I had to play Hoagy in my head-to-head against you, I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to try to avoid that. And I'll take some sacrifices at the top, but if I can stay, around like the 88 range and above, I would prefer to do that. But Hoagy definitely in the conversation.
If I need extra flexibility, if it really makes everything else work, I'm okay with that too. I think that he's at least in the consideration set for that type of format. Let's talk about Alex Smalley. He's $9,100. One of the newcomers, having played mostly on the Canadian Tour and the Corn Ferry Tour thus far, but the numbers are good for Smalley when you adjust for field strength. And he's played decently well this swing season. Smalley's played 5 events in the swing season. He has made the cut in 4 of those. That does include back-to-back top 15 finishes at the Bermuda and at the Houston Open. Smalley, if you look at Data Golf's true strokes gain query, which does adjust for field strength, is between Keegan Bradley, our guy, and Troy Merritt. And like those are relevant golfers, guys we consider. Smalley seems decently well-rounded. He's $9,100. Brandon, you tend to know these guys better than I do. These guys transitioning from other tours. What's your read on Smalley, and is he worth a shot at $9,100?
Yeah, I wouldn't talk anyone out of him this week. Not the most amazing course fit, but definitely not someone you bump down too much. The PGA Tour event data on him is pretty solid, basically field level once adjusted for everything. And honestly, that gives me like a Alonto Griffin vibe with the just sort of like right around field average and everything. Doesn't stand out in anything yet. Pretty accurate, 65th percentile. So he was someone I very strongly considered. I didn't quite get there myself, but definitely not somebody that I would talk anyone else out of for this week. Just probably not making it there for me because I would rather bump down, save some salary with like a Taylor Moore or a Chad Ramy.
Or you could use his clone, Lonzo Griffin himself, who I will be talking about later on, because I think Lonzo is also in play for this week in that same range. So we'll talk about that later on. But first, let's take a look at what the bookmakers are saying for this RSM Classic. Scottie Scheffler and Webb Simpson are the co-favorites at FanDuel Sportsbook. They are 14-1. Cameron Smith is 17-1. Then there is a teardrop down to Louis Westhuizen at 25-1. Corey Connors and Russell Henley are 27-1. Harris English and Kevin Kisner are both 30-1. And then Joaquin Neiman is 31-1. Adam Scott, Alex Noren, round at the top group, they are both 36-1. So we talked about the top 3 guys, and Scheffler, Webb, et cetera, et cetera. What are you viewing as being the top of the second tier? We'll put Louis as being in the top 3. I mean, you could put Cameron Smith there, I guess, but like, let's say the top 4. After Louis, in that second tier, who's your favorite guy there?
That would be at salary. That would be Russell Henley.
Okay, I like it.
Followed up by Corey Connors.
Okay.
I think that, I mean, I don't know how deep you want me to go, but
no, I think that's fine. Where are you at with Harris English? Do you think that he's definitively like far behind Connors and Henley, or no?
No, and that's the thing is like this is a week where you give me Henley and above. I'm not going to put Neiman in that list just because not the best course fit, but so that's how many names is this?
Form's also a little funky for Neiman.
7, the top 7 golfers: Henley, English, Connors, Louis, Cam Smith, Webb, Scheffler. I'm fine with any of them.
And I think that I agree with you, and I think that my takeaway is I want 2 of those 7. I think that I'm okay being in the low end of that, but I want 2 of those 7 in my lineups.
Yeah, that's fine. My combo model, which accounts for like everything I look at, has all of those guys top 10 aside from Harris English, who's 14th. But Harris English also seems to be not getting a whole lot of buzz, if I recall correctly. So
he will be getting buzz later.
I'm fine with no, he's up there. But
okay, just kidding.
Either way, we're still getting buzz. He's just a little bit more. Yeah. Henley's kind of the outlier from a tag standpoint, according to FanShare. So he's already, I mean, he's 3rd in my combo model outright. So I'm cool with that. Like, I'm just going to play who I think is going to be the least popular out of those. And that includes English, even though I have him a little bit lower than everyone else.
Sure. What about for a head-to-head or a cash game? Are you leaning towards Henley there?
Louis Henley.
Okay.
Save the most salary I can there.
Right.
Again, from a strict head-to-head standpoint, I do want to make sure that I get Louis in there most likely. And I know I was open to the idea of starting a lineup with like a Gooch or a Scott, or having that be my second salary golfer. But I like Henley enough. I'm with you where I do think there's a bit of a drop off. Although, for what it's worth, Gooch is 6th in my combo model, so maybe I should be a little bit more open to that. What about you?
I think the Gooch would be like the exception potentially. I mean, Scott too. But like, I do think that like there is a fall off. I don't know. It's trade off. I think that I'd prefer to get those 2 if I have to settle for Gooch or a Scott. That's fine, but I think I'd prefer to get 2 of those top 7 in each lineup. We talked about Kisner as being a guy whose odds have shifted a lot. He opened at 41. He's now bet down to 30, and that to us was a red flag because it could mean that he's getting buzz, could translate to popularity in DFS. Who else fits in the Kisner bucket of having odds that have shortened since things opened?
Surprisingly, Russell Henley from 31 to 27. But the FanShare data is not quite there. Luke List, 80 to 75. Hendrick Norlander, 100 to 90. Again, a lot of golfers' odds have just lengthened. Very few have shortened, aside from those 4. So I think it's at least relevant if we talk about those whose odds have stayed the same, which is kind of noteworthy in itself. Corey Connors stayed at 27. Joaquin Neiman at 31. Justin Rose, 50. Seamus Power at 55.
So Hendrick Norlander is someone I tend to like. He is $8,800. You mentioned his odds shortened to 90 to 1. He actually opened at 120 when I pulled. So he's been 120 to 90, 24th in fairways gained. He is 16th in approach. The short game, not ideal. Are you into Norlander this week?
He's fine. Just not enough to really rate him above some other golfers in that same salary tier. That includes virtually like everyone down there. It's like 120 to 1 at this point. But Emiliano Grillo at 9,000, Taylor Moore 87, Chad Ramy 86, and our guy Chez Reavie 86 as well. I would rank all of them above Norlander.
Okay, so Norlander not getting buzz for Brandon, or not getting Brandon's attention yet, despite the betting odds shortening. You know, to apologize in the group text later on.
Troy Merritt as well. I know, Hendrick. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. We'll make it up to you eventually. We'll be back on.
It's not
you. It's good enough.
It's me.
We'll get there. Yeah.
It's me and my process.
It's always Brandon. Let's be honest here. Let's move on to weather here. And weather is
Do
noteworthy
you want to talk about the
because
lower salary guys?
I thought you just listed all of them. Did you
No,
just list all of them?
No, I listed the guys I preferred over Hendrick Norlander.
All right. Well, list me the lower
I
salary
thought that was an
guy.
extension of saying that he moved.
Go ahead.
For anyone not watching, Jim put up an overlay that said we're going back to bookmaker odds. So.
Yeah, because I do like an annotation on the YouTube stream that says, here's where we're on the rundown in case you're like skimming through the YouTube video and you want to see where we're at. I had already shifted to weather because I thought that you'd covered it basically by talking about those guys. And now we're back to bookmaker odds. So if someone's like scrolling through YouTube, like looking at the little preview, you're like, these guys were on weather. Now they're back to bookmaker odds. This is treason. And I wanted to align with them. I wanted to speak to our fans, know my audience, and say back to bookmaker odds so they're not totally confused.
Yeah, we'll get the Pepe Sylvia meme going, trying to follow the structure of this podcast. Lower salary golfers whose odds that stand out to me, which is definitely not a question you ask me. You always ask me that. Brandon Grace is 75 to 1 at 9,000. Troy Merritt, a name I was going to throw in above Norlander as well for me in my rankings. He's 90 to 1. Same as Denny McCarthy, Hendrick Norlander, and Keith Mitchell. And then we also have our guy, Hank Lebioda again, 100 to 1. Salary is 7,900. He is the only golfer below 8,000 I would even consider for this week. I don't think you have to dig that far for this week. And then 18 more golfers have odds of 120 to 1 with salaries below 9,000. So it's one of those weeks.
Old Hank Lebioda has also gotten buzz because he was 120 to 1. He's now 100. So that's noteworthy. I don't think I'm there, but like, you know, I get what you're saying. He's the only one you consider down below 8,000. I don't think I'd use him, but like, I think he'd be the top guy there.
Yeah, he's the only one below 8,000 I would consider. I don't think I have to get there, like I said, but we've been on Lebioda for a while, and I think it's good process. The results just haven't followed.
So Keith Mitchell's a name that's interesting there. He's $8,500. This is not a Keith Mitchell course. Keith Mitchell can hit some tanks. Are you into Mitchell at all here from an upside perspective? Because like bigger hitters always have an advantage. It's just more so it can be mitigated in some places. Is that enough to get you on Mitchell at 85 or no?
I mean, it would be if I didn't like some other names better. Like he's above field average in fairways gained over the past 50 rounds. It's more that the irons long term haven't been quite good, and that's typically what holds him back. So he's fine, but you know, there's just a lot of names down here, and I don't think he can make the cut.
Okay. Do I have your permission to go to weather now?
Yeah, you do.
Okay. Well, let's do that and go to weather and talk about that because it actually is kind of noteworthy for this week, given that it is a 2-course event. Friday looks pretty windy. Winds getting as high as 16 miles per hour. Tiny bit lower in the morning, the wind is, but for the most part, it's just windy all day. Saturday and Sunday are the same. So 15 mile per hour winds for 3 out of the 4 days they're doing this event. The one day that it isn't as windy is Thursday. Brandon, we have 2 different courses here, and courses play differently with wind. Are you tempted to course stack, prioritizing golfers on the course more prone to the wind? I'm assuming the seaside course. That could be a dumb assumption, but like I'm assuming it's seaside course. Are you tempted to stack courses and use the guys on the course more prone to wind on Thursday when things are calmer? Any wind splits for you? How does wind impact things for your view of this event?
Yeah, you can look up wind splits on Fantasy National if you want. I think the real takeaway though is taking a chance on stacking courses, which probably long term is not the worst strategy for multi-course setups. So that's something that I would definitely consider. I don't think I'd get there in a head-to-head because I still want to play my favorite process plays, unless it's a lot of coin flips, and then I just side with stacking the right, the quote unquote right, but like the just stacking the course that I think looks better.
Yeah. I will note again, it's not like a significant difference. It's like a 8 mile per hour wind on Thursday versus 15 on Friday, but that can make a difference. You can feel that for sure. Yeah. So I think I would check out tee times, See if you want to consider that. That's an angle to play, and it could help you deviate from the chalk once again. So keep that in mind when filling out your lineups once tee times are out. Okay, let's go now into our player picks here for the RSM Classic. Based on the salaries over at FanDuel.com, Brandon, who do you have in the upper tier?
I'm going to go with Louis. He's the most likely winner. Good salary of 11,700. Most likely winner according to my win simulation model. I should probably clarify. 81st percentile in fairways gained. Just the best long-term golfer in the field. It's a pretty deep field overall. And again, that kind of goes back to the balance. So I like any savings I can get at the top. And that includes Louis at 11.7.
Yeah, I think that Louis is the best play in the field. I've got him as my top guy as well. I think that for a cash game, I put Louis in there first. And for tournaments based on early vibe, I don't think I'll have to worry too much about, his being too popular. So I think it's Louis number one in all formats and go from there. Speaking of going from there, Brandon, who is the second player you're plugging in this upper range?
Russell Henley, 11.3. I think he's just the best value at his salary outside of Louis among those at the top. 96th percentile in fairways or strokes gained fairways through green. So basically removing off the tee play, which I think is doable this week. Seventh at the Houston Open, almost called it the U.S. Open. Top 25 and three of his past 4 starts. Just that, someone that we can bump up at a course like this that benefits from accuracy. 89th percentile there over the past 50 rounds. 11th percentile in distance gains. So you can actually use that kind of to look at which golfers are potentially still, even average off the tee with strokes gained, but who really get bogged down from a lack of distance. So, Henley should really benefit this week.
So we have a Taylor Gooch versus Adam Scott head-to-head. Do you want a Russell Henley versus Harris English head-to-head?
I don't, but I'll take it.
Okay.
I think they're both in play.
Okay. Well, I'll take that and go with Harris English, my second high salary guy. I think that Louis plus English does make me a bit top heavy, at least top heavier than I've been doing recently. But I do think that that top tier is worth prioritizing for me. English, another well-rounded guy, 51st in fairways gained, 31st in approach, 10th around the green, 12th in Bermuda putting the past 100 rounds per Fantasy National. English did withdraw at the CJ Cup, and he did miss a cut at the Shriners, but the Shriners one was because he lost 6 strokes putting in 2 rounds. That's not great. He actually gained 3.5 tee to green in those 2 rounds, so just disastrous on the greens. I will trust the larger sample with English, saying that he's a good putter, and take him here at 11.3. Brandon, any final thoughts for you on this top range before we move to the mid-range?
No, I think we really covered this one. English is last for me, but he's still very much in play if we find out that he's got the right tee time split and just isn't that popular.
Yep, I think that's the way to view things this week. If we've got pivots, you should use them if you must, based on the volatility of this event and based on our ability to project who will be popular. Let's move now to the mid-range. Who are you starting off with in the 10,000, 9,000 range?
Well, I'm going to go right above that with Joel Damon at 10,100. I think he's just too good to gloss over, but doesn't really quite fit within the context of the top 7. But Damon at 10-1, Max Homa at 10-3. You can get the buddy combo there, or the frenemy, whatever they got going on. And Brendan Todd at 10-4. I'll make seeing those names there really make me want to go a little bit more balanced this week. But Damon 79th percentile and adjusted tee to green over the past year, 86th percentile in fairways gained over the past 50 rounds, coming in with a 5th at the Houston Open, 45th at the Mayakoba, made 3 of his past 4 cuts at this event. I'm back on Damon.
You mentioned Homa, he's 10-3. Damon is 10-1. Do you think you'll be able to get back up here because of the mid 8,000 range? Because that's the trouble I'm having. If I'm building out my lineup right now, I'm not quite able to get back up there. I can get to the high 9,000 range. Getting back up to the 10,000 range, a tiny bit tougher for me unless I were to go Gooch or Scott over someone like English or Henley.
So this is why I need to really think long and hard about the second golfer that I go with. Yeah. And that's what initially drew me toward like an Adam Scott. But if I go the whole way down to Brendan Todd and I play Louis, Todd, Homa, Damon, I love that start. I have 87.50. That puts me right kind of in that range where I still like some golfers in the upper 8s and I won't feel bad about any golfer.
Yeah.
But I still also don't feel like I'm just rostering every golfer yo-yoing the 10,000 range and going extremely balanced. So maybe I'll have to play Hank if I want to go extra heavy at the top.
But Hank's viable, so that makes sense. The guy I think I'm turning to when I need to save that $200 from Damon on down is Seamus Power. Seamus was unkind to me last week, missed the cut, but that was due to bad putting. He was at negative 0.4 strokes to greens. Not a positive, but also fine. In general, Power is not a bad putter. He ranks 31st on Bermuda. He is also 24th in approach, 12th around the green. He has struggled this event in the past, but Power seems like he's taken a step up recently. So I think $9,900 is a forgiving salary for someone with a decent skill set. So despite the miscut, I am back on Seamus Power this week. Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, I'm back there as well. He's an other to consider for me. So just basically top 5 in this range, but not top 2. Good irons, good Bermuda putting, good form overall, which is why we've been on him the past few weeks.
All right, sticking in the mid-range here, your second golfer is in the Keith Mitchell fold, where it's not a Keith Mitchell course, but it may not matter. Who you got here?
I'm going to go with Luke List.
Let's do
it. There's just, again, it's hard to not say people have upside if they don't really putt that well, but we've seen List with good finishes despite his putting being whatever it is. He contended for a minute last week, finished 11th. You'll take that. At the salary, which was 84 last week. It's up to 93 this week, but I think that's fair. 7th at the Zozo, missed cut at the Mayakoba, and 2 other respectable fields, comparable fields to this one. He has 2 top 15 finishes at this event in 5 tries. And we know the putting is an issue, but the ball striking is just too good to hate on to the point where I wouldn't consider him.
Yeah, I think that List can put it on the fairway at times. If you look at his good drive number, I'm pretty sure it's better than his accuracy number. So it's more, and he's good around the green too. So it's not all short game. It's just the putting is really, really bad. But in the same range, we got Alonto Griffin. I alluded to him before, and Lonzo's been kind of weird recently. He made the cut, but struggled over the weekend in the Houston Open. His approach play was rough in August and September, but he's 92 and in a pretty poor low 9,000 range. I'll take some slides to Alonto Griffin here. He has shown up at tons recently. He gained 6.9 total strokes at the Zozo, where there was no shot link. He also gained 4.4 tee to green at the Shriners, finished 6th, thanks to some really good putting there. And the putting can happen too, because Alonto ranks 22nd in Bermuda putting. He's also 41st in approach. It is kind of a bet that he returns to old form a bit, but I think I trust Alonto Griffin enough to make that bet. So Alonto Griffin to me is someone I'm into at 92. Brandon, where does Alonto, who's typically your guy, grade out for you this week?
He grades out moderately well. Not enough to want to make him a core play, not enough to sort of build around him or feel like I want to get back up to him from the upper 8,000 range. So it's Lonto. I think I want a little bit more juice, but again, he's a good putter, and that is very much a key part of the recipe to having a good finish. So I'm not going to talk you out of Lonto, but sure, I won't be playing him this week myself.
Okay. I think that's very fair too. And I think my overall goal is to avoid that range, but if I'm there, I'd think Lonto is probably the guy who would stand out most to me. Let's move now to the value range, guys, at $9,000 and lower. Brandon, who are you turning to down there?
I'm going to keep the awful putting theme going here with Emiliano Grillo at 9,000. He played the RSM last year, finished 18th while gaining 2 strokes off the tee, 2.7 strokes from approach across his 3 measured shot length rounds. That's his path to success because it's not putting, although on Bermuda, it's not too bad. Over his past 100 rounds, he's lost an average of 0.11 strokes per round. It's not really red flag territory at that rate. So I think that there's enough to get back on Grillo this week.
I think with Grillo, it's because he's become less of an outlier in the putting, in the positive sense. So it's just becoming, you're not putting in a -2 as the baseline or the hope in the putting department for Grillo. I think that's a big thing. Opposite end of the spectrum is Denny McCarthy. And I actually think Denny McCarthy is interesting this week. I'm not usually on McCarthy, but for $8,600, I kind of think I will be this week. McCarthy penalized less with a non-distance course. He's great on putting all surfaces, but Bermuda is actually his best. He does have an 8th place finish here in the past. That was back in 2019. So McCarthy, not the specific I typically use, nor the archetype I typically use, but I think he does make sense here. Again, Griffin's typically your guy, so is McCarthy. Not your guy, but a guy you tend to use more than I do. What are your thoughts on Denny McCarthy for this week specifically?
As in, I use him 1 out of every 100 lineups, as opposed
1 out of every 2 years, whereas I'm 1 out of every 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I see the case for it just because there's a reason that certain golfers are on the PGA Tour. We know for McCarthy, it's his short game, which includes his wedge play. Um, his irons are not that bad. Like, they're kind of field average recently. It's just that he's not the longest hitter. He's not just we'll say like he's not the best golfer, but he's phenomenal because he's on the PGA Tour. And in a field like this, there's enough there. So I'm going to go with McCarthy. He didn't quite make the cut for me, but sometimes there are golfers that you bring up, and I'm sure the opposite, where it's like, no, I actively don't want to play him. I don't feel that way with McCarthy. I just don't think I'll get there myself.
Every single person you bring up is someone I actively don't want to use. So let's go to your second golfer.
Well, you just played yourself because you're gonna fade the winner, and your I think all-time favorite golfer, Ches Reavie, Chesweek.
No. List. You already cursed List. Like, let's not curse everyone who I like. Poor Ches. Ches doesn't deserve this. Justice for Ches.
Reavie's made 2 straight cuts: 41st at the Houston Open, 33rd at the Mayakoba. Those aren't going to move the needle, but he sets up well for Sea Island Resort. He leads the field in fairways gained over the past 50 rounds on the PGA Tour, according to Fantasy National. Over the past calendar year, he's got 89th percentile adjusted iron play, which adjusts for recency in my database as well. And his path to a good finish is obvious. He's going to, if he hits fairways and then hits those great irons into birdie position without really needing to be long, that's the case. Now, he has missed the cut in 2 of 3 tries here, but his strokes gain totals in those negative 6.4, negative 2.3, and negative 2.2, which would include 1 round for the missed cuts. The 2.3 that he lost was when he finished like 33rd.
Yeah. And I think that Ches is kind of just undersalaried, is my vibe that I get from him. I think he should be closer to like 94, 95, somewhere in that range. So I'm getting a quality of golfer in that low 9,000 range without spending the low 9,000 range. So Ches, to me, does grade out pretty well. My second guy is Chad Ramy, a guy we talked about a couple events ago. He's had mixed results in the swing season with a couple missed cuts and 2 top 20s across 5 events, but the approach play has looked good. And that was the key to success for Ramy on the Corn Ferry Tour. He gained 2.6 at the Fortinet, 2.2 at the Sanderson Farms, 4 at the Shriners, 0.7 in 2 rounds last week in a missed cut. And Ramy does seem to be a bad putter. It looks like he struggles around the green as well, but I can live with the all-around gain here at $8,600, given the fact that I can bank on the approach play being pretty good and his salary being $8,600. So, Brandon, where are you at Chad Ramy for this week?
I like him. He's another to consider in that range. For me, I prefer Taylor Moore by a tinge, but Moore is the best long-term golfer in my model. Over the past year, with a salary of $9,000 or lower, Ramy is second. So
okay, I will take that for sure. Other guy I wanted to ask you about, because I was kind of looking at him, is
Hayden Buckley.
What? Sorry,
I thought it was Hayden Buckley.
No, I actually thought about talking about him in current form, but do you have takes on Hayden Buckley?
Not enough to bring him up, so no.
Okay, Lucas Glover is 85 as well. Are you laughing at Lucas Glover?
I just thought it was going to be like a more uncertain name.
No, just a good name.
Yeah,
because I like this range. I think that he's there. I'm open to him.
Great ball striking, very accurate.
So we talked about a lot of guys in the mid 8,000 range. You talked about, Hankley Biota at 79. You talked about Ches and Emiliano Grillo at 9,000. If you had to pick a guy in the mid 8,000 range, who would you go to there?
Does that not include Ches at 86?
I thought that Ches was 9,000.
Yeah, it's because I'm a dummy and made a mistake on the note sheet.
So outside of Ches, who's number 2?
Ramy at 86.
Okay. Perfect. I will live with that for sure. Let's finish up here with some win picks for the RSM Classic. And again, our final ones of the year. You hit a winner 2 weeks ago, so I'm still playing catch up here. I know I've got a long time, but I don't want to scramble like I did last year. So based on the current odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook, I'm assuming you're going Louis for one.
Louis at 25 is locked in. I already bet that myself, although I got it at 22. So.
Oh, wow. You got to shop around, bud.
Well, I thought he was going to shorten because I was like, my model had him at 16-1. I was like, he's going to shorten soon. So
you don't get odds or edges that big in golf very often for outrights. That's pretty nice for Louis. Okay. Louis is your first one. Who do you want for your second?
I will go with, it's between Todd Homa and Corey Connors, but I think I might go Max Homa 70. I'm going to go with Max Homa here.
Okay.
I don't love the course fit, but
yeah,
at a certain point, like that dude wins. And I think that as much as I hate to admit it, there's something to that. Like he's over that hump. And I already bet him myself, so I'll just mention him here.
Okay. So I'm also going to do Louis. I think it's really hard not to.
Yeah.
I think he's just the best actual value in this event. So I'm going to go Louis as well. For the other one, he kind of didn't pan out last week, but let's go back to the Seamus Power well. Seamus Power for this week is 55-1 over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I think that's a pretty good number for someone of his mold.
This is just one of those weeks where it's like, I wouldn't talk you out a lot of people aside from Kisner just because the betting odds are too short and the FanDuel salary is too high.
Okay. So who is your win pick again outside of Louis?
I want Max Homa at 70-1.
Okay.
It was between Corey Connors and Brendan Todd as well.
You have Homa at 70. I have Power at 55. And we both have Louis Westhuizen at 25-1 for this week. Brandon, any final thoughts for the good people, the good listeners, the good audience members before we send them off to fill out their lineups for the RSM Classic?
Be okay thinking differently this week. I don't know if anyone's going to be prohibitively popular, but you can still differentiate in a lot of ways, especially down lower in the salary tier.
And with the way the event sets up, you are incentivized to be different. And we have logical pivots, and that is the key setup we want when trying to identify times where deviating makes a lot of sense. That is all that we have here for today and this year on the PGA podcast here on the Heat Check. But as mentioned, a lot of stuff. NFL twice weekly, 3 times weekly next week with Thanksgiving. PGA will be back in January. We have UFC via Austin Swain. NBA and NHL covered by Tom Vecchio. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, leave a rating and review, hit subscribe. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
You can find Brandon tweeting up a storm throughout the offseason, the quote-unquote offseason for golf over there. I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today and this entire year. Enjoy the golf at the RSM. Enjoy the match. Enjoy the hero. Enjoy the holiday break. We'll talk to you once again in January for more PGA DFS. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.